Hello, it's election time in India. The temperatures are hot and the political temperatures are at the hottest. Elections come with election manifestos. And reading those manifestos, I am reminded of some economic theories. Now, these economic theories have implications. You might say sometimes these are funny, but they are not funny if one looks at what they portend for the fortunes of the parties. This is what we shall be looking at in this episode of On Point. I am a maverick observer of the Indian economy, and these voyages of discovery fascinate me, just as you, my friend, also find them fascinating. But when you do so, my request is that when you subscribe, please don't forget to press the bell icon. What does that do? It reminds you that the next episode is on the air, so you never miss them out. Now, on to our story. Manifestos. So, why does the BJP manifesto have a particular orientation, or the Congress manifesto, or for that matter, the manifestos of the other parties? To understand this, let's step back a bit to what is called the Schelling's focal point problem. This was enunciated by Schelling in his book, The Strategy of Conflict. It came out in the 60s and he got him a Nobel Prize. What did it say? Well, let me explain it this way. What Schelling said was that in any episode or in any situation, people look for a focal point. For instance, suppose there's an argument happening in an office among, say, few people, 7, 8 people. Now, you would find that most people usually tend to veer towards a common point, a middle ground, so to say. Or take another example. Supposing there's a city where two friends have landed and have got lost. Now, we of course assume that they don't have a mobile between them. So, it's a pre-mobile generation, but the lessons hold. What does it say? If these two friends now want to re-establish connection and they don't know where the other person has veered off to, it's a good hypothesis to land up in the most significant point in the city, say Connaught Place in Delhi or the Eiffel Tower in Paris. We do that regularly in our daily lives. Supposing in our family we have gone to a marriage, people have got scattered. Chances are that if we move towards the food spread, we will find our members there. We naturally work out these focal points. So, focal points are the reasons why manifestos also tend to have the same focal point. Since what we are saying is that people tend to gravitate towards a common position, it's also very evident that political parties, when they write their manifestos, will also tend to veer toward the same common positions. There are very established positions which parties therefore tend to take, centrist positions, you might say. It's one of the reasons why party manifestos often tend to be very boring. They say the same thing in different languages, but more or less come to the same point. And that is one thing that we shall keep in mind. Now, what does happen, if you might say, if parties do not stick to the same central position? There's another economic theory for it, slightly older. It's called the Hotelling's law. What does that say? Look at this graph, this diagram. It makes it easier. Now, to make it easy to understand, let me give an example. Supposing there's a village with one main street. On that main street, supposing a shop wants to be set up, where would you think would the people or the shopkeeper want to set up a shop? He'll typically take up the middle position in the village, the center of the village. What happens? He gets customers from both sides. They come in and his business runs. Now, supposing competition comes in, this shopkeeper finds that there's another shopkeeper who's setting up a shop. Where would you think the second shopkeeper will set up her shop? Well, it's no surprise, she'll also either face the first shopkeeper or be next to the same shopkeeper. We have seen that happening because both essentially want to command the maximum crowd, and it makes sense to be in the center position. But supposing one of the shopkeepers says that I want to maximize my strategy, I want to move to a particular corner. Well, so instead of being in the center of the street, this shopkeeper, one of them, moves to a corner. What will happen? Now, for the people in that corner, this shop is very comfortable. It's nearer to them. They don't have to trudge all the way to the main street, to the main point, center of this village. So, therefore, they are now much more loyal to him or to her. This shop commands a lot of benefit, a lot of loyal customers. But what happens to the people on the other end of the village? The distance for them has increased. Look at this diagram again. The distance for them has increased. So, instead of trudging to the main point of the city or to the center point of the village, they now have to trudge a longer distance. So, what do you think will happen to these people? Well, just as the people at one end, let's call it point A, have become much more interested in the shopkeeper who has moved to a corner, for the people in the point B, the shopkeeper is actually much more farther from them. Now, imagine, let's remove these shops with manifestos or party positions and let's play a mind game. What does it mean? It means that if a party manifesto, instead of being centrist, being more or less situated in the middle of the mind space of the people, moves to a corner, the chances are the people in that corner, that mind space, will be more attuned to that party's manifestos. But by the same logic, the people with the other mind space, the people who have different orientation, will be even more detached from this party's positions. So, what's happening is, supposing if we look at it instead of, let's take a simple right and left binary, the rightist position, the leftist position. Well, if some party takes a pronounced rightist position, it captures a lot of voters on one corner. By the same logic, if a party takes a pronounced leftist position, it captures a lot of voters on the leftist position. But it risks losing a lot of the voters on the other end of the spectrum. Now, assuming that the voters are all spread equally, like in the case of this village, supposing the village is uniformly inhabited. And so, let's say in a group of 100 people, there are 4 junctions, 25% each. The chances are that the people in one corner will vote heavily for that party, the party which has moved to one corner, so 25%, but this party risks how much more? It almost entirely risks losing out this 50%, quadrant A and section A and section B, so 25 plus 25, 50%, and possibly a bit more of the third segment also. So, this party might actually end up at something like 37%, 25 plus 12. It gets a very committed 37%, but it loses 63% of the other portion it loses 63%. Now, remember, we are not talking about the vote share election. Don't confuse this with the idea that a party in election has won 33% of the seats and has 33% of the vote share and has become the leader. We are talking of a simple two-party system where both have to capture all the people. So it's 100 or nothing, because that 100 will not stay uncommitted. They will actually gravitate towards one or the other. So one person gets 37%, the other person gets 63%. The voting margin becomes huge. Reading the two-party manifestos, the BJP and the Congress, to me, and not just to me, but many political observers believe that the Congress has taken a corner position. So, going by the logic that I just talked about, you can do the math. What might it mean for the other party? But hang on, there's an important implication here. What the Congress is also assuming, and many parties moving to a particularly corner position does assume, is that the voters are not spread equally. The Congress party's policymakers have decided that the voters are actually more concentrated in their half of the village. So instead of those 4 quadrants being equally divided, they feel that the mind space of the villagers are actually more concentrated in their part. So there's no point in telling the Indian voters to vote wisely. They always vote wisely. But have the parties chosen their position wisely? This is what we shall know on June 4th. And that, when I see the data, when we see the results, we can use the insight that we just discussed in this episode. And that's all from this edition of On Point. For a detailed description of what we discussed here, please visit my Substack. The link is in the description below. Thank you.